as a tool. So that's how we're going to use our Commonplace binder, Commonplace book thing. So I'm going to set this down now. This is the Commonplace Binder 101 playlist. We're looking at episode number 64, which is great because it means we're almost a third of the way through. I meant to say almost 2/3 of the way through. And if we look at the front cover, we can see number 64 says use. So, how to actually use your Commonplace binder. How are we going to make that happen? Well, let's get into it. Easier than you think. Yeah, it should be easier than you think, unless you've already figured out that all of the people on YouTube and all of the documents regarding this are people saying that it's basically magic and it's used by super geniuses. But in reality, this is just taking notes. So, I'm pretty sure you did that in school. But this actually makes the notes in school valuable, as opposed to basically meaningless. Like, in school, we had to do annotations, and take notes on books, and all that other stuff. But then we never actually used the notes. We didn't actually do anything with the things. And so how do you actually use your Commonplace binder? Well, you just take the quotes from the book, and you put them in your note space, and then you actually use your notes. That's kind of it. So you take somebody else's words, and then you write words about it, and then you can sort that if you want. And then based on how you list all the things, you will look at it and be like, wow, nice. Okay, we're going to do the rest of the video, but that's basically the general idea. Simple with no text. So for some people, the thing to do is have absolutely no text in their binder. They just want to write random things or draw random things, and that's fine. So some people might say that's more of a sketchbook, but a Commonplace book is kind of like the common place where the things go. So if you do not have a sketchbook, they go in the Commonplace. Expensive products. Do you need the fanciest paper and pen and book or binder or whatever else? This is notes. Okay? So it might be really advanced notes, but like, if it's good enough for you to take notes on, and you are comfortable going back to that type of paper, it's fine. Descriptionless. So I feel like I left that one a little bit descriptionless. Basically, you don't need the super fancy products. If you want to have fancy products, you can get them. I am not selling them. In the 66 video, I might be selling something. Who knows? I've been pushing towards that for like 40 videos at this point. So it'd be really funny if I wasn't selling anything at all, if I was just like, check out my other videos, wow! But yeah, descriptionless. A Commonplace binder is descriptionless. If you Google it or whatever. I mean, maybe there's a description now, but basically it's a Commonplace book, but I labeled it Commonplace binder because I use a binder. And in terms of the method being different, this has rings, which means page numbers here make no sense, because if stuff comes in and goes out, well, the page numbers don't matter. And if the page numbers don't matter, then the index doesn't matter. And if the index doesn't matter, we need a contents page to keep track of everything. That's literally the only difference. Or the only set of differences, because there are differences, but it's pretty much, there's no index because there's nothing that supports the index. Okay. Real flowers. One of the things that people like to do is they like to make their stuff really fancy. And so one of the things is to, make it about what aristocrats from Western Europe liked, because many of the older books that were known as Commonplace books were from Western European nobles and other rich people. And they liked hanging out in the garden. They liked traveling. They liked staying at home. And just, all the things that people do when they don't have a job in the way that society respects, rather than the way that society despises. Like if somebody's rich and they have no job, people are like, oh, wow, they must be living life and have lots of hobbies. But if somebody's poor and has no job, it's like, oh, well, they're basically dead. And So, you know, maybe some flowers will help with that. I don't know. I guess it depends who you are and what you want. Find everything. So historically, a commonplace book was the place to find all of your things. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense anymore because we have computers. And so, like, before computers, everyone had to write everything down by hand. But now that we can store some things by computer, it doesn't really make sense to hold all of our old discarded information or failed projects, because why would we not just put it on the computer and get rid of the physical version that we don't like anymore? You know what I'm saying? Like, holding on to every piece of scrap paper, which was considered a failure, is just going to give you, like, an incredible amount of clutter. And if you want an incredible amount of clutter, if you want to make it, like, feel like you have a library of things that you have created, then sure, go nuts. But learning tool. I am learning to move past the things that stress me out and just get into the things that are actually going to make a difference with my time and everybody else's time. And one of them is using this as a learning tool. So for me, I used a Commonplace book, well, specifically a Commonplace binder, as a way to cut down on all of my old crap from school. So I was told I wasn't allowed to throw anything away from school. And so what I did is I just hoarded the stuff, because if I couldn't throw the stuff away and I wasn't going to give it away because, you know, it had my name on it and a whole bunch of other stuff I didn't really want to give to people, then yeah, I had to cut down all the information, because I realized, oh yeah, I don't actually need to hold on to this anymore, because the person who was telling me I couldn't get rid of it is no longer around. So I guess I'm just going to get rid of all of it. And when I got rid of all of it, I used it as a learning tool, because I would go through, I would eliminate about 10%, and I would convert that 10% into, you know, like a sentence or two of useful information, and then I would move on and come back to it later, and I would do the same thing. And so eventually I learned a little bit from all my old school notes, although I have to say the school notes were kind of trash. They were not super relevant. Alternative method. So a Commonplace binder is different than a Commonplace book. By the way, that was this finger. I just realized I was looking away from the screen, and that might look a little weird. This is not an alternative signal or symbol or anything. I'm just somebody who waves their hands around while they talk. So alternative method, yeah. Like if you're used to a computer, maybe consider a Commonplace book. If you're used to a Commonplace book, maybe consider a Commonplace binder. There are alternative methods to this. You could use something called like a Zettelkasten, where you basically use smaller sheets of paper and keep them in boxes. So that's more like of a note card, flashcard, index card kind of situation. I actually hate that one. There's something called an Evernote, Everbook, something like that. I think it's an Everbook, where people basically just have like a folder rather than a binder. And so that one's probably easier for accessing the information, but it's probably harder for making sure it doesn't spill all over the floor. And, you know, there's a pro and a con with every single one of these systems, and some of the systems have several cons or several pros. But I believe if you don't know which one to go with, the Commonplace binder is a good place to start, because it might be a little bit difficult to write in the binder while you're holding it, but it's close enough to all the things that you might actually want to use long term, to the point where you won't eventually be using the binder, or you won't be using the binder, you'll just be using whatever the thing it convinced you to use. And so I think that's pretty good. Like, if you can use something for 5 years and that helps you figure out what to do for 50 years, that is time well spent. 3-page gap. Okay, so one of the problems with a Commonplace book is there needs to be a content section or an index. Now, if you're using a book rather than a binder, all of your stuff is static. And what I mean by that is it cannot move unless you just start erasing everything. But that only works if you use pencil. If you use pen, it's just in there now. So when it comes to a content section, I would recommend 3 pages, because if you use 4 pages or 5 pages, you're probably not doing so great when it comes to consolidating the information. And if you have under 3 pages, you're giving yourself absolutely no wiggle room. Or the sections are absolutely massive, at which point it might make sense to cut them down. because the index is normally about finding specific terms, and so it might be that you're just writing a whole bunch of stuff and there's no way to search anything. So it's just kind of a mess. So I would recommend 3 pages. That is, both sides of the page should be available. If you only have a front and a back, and you are only using 3 pages, I feel like you're risking it a little bit, but as always, you could definitely just make it happen. Where are we? We just did the 3-page gap. Feels organic. Does it feel organic to say 3-page gap? No, it does not. That feels really weird. And part of that is because I wrote 32 scripts and then took the outlines of those 32 scripts and then decided to record them. And this is the final one of the 32, because this is 64. And, you know, I made 1 video and then another video and then 2 videos and then 4 videos and then 8 videos and then 16 videos. And so because I did that huge, long, complicated process, and then I did this set of 32, I don't necessarily remember what was going on at the end. So does it feel organic? Not really. It did feel organic when I was writing it, because I was like, heck yeah. No, I'm kidding. It felt pretty bad, actually. So I think from now on, I'm only going to do sets of 16, and then maybe change it up for the beginning or the end of a playlist. But the middle, I think I'm just going to do 16 from now on, because 16 was nice. 16 felt really productive. I could record 4 videos in one day, and then 4 videos the day after that, and then 4 videos the day after that, and then 4 videos the day after that. And so it would feel really good, because I was like, yes, I have created a huge amount of content. And then I'd have to edit it, and I would just be like, oh, God. That kind of sucked. Because when I'm editing, the problem isn't the actual editing process. The problem is the waiting for the video to go through the program. And then after it's done that, I have to upload it. And then the upload time is also a long time. So I'm just sitting there. That sucks. Now, you might say, well, you could go do some other stuff. You could look at some other things. A lot of my life is on the computer now, and it kind of sucks to have to go through everything else. So I don't really like completely cutting myself off from the computer, because when I'm uploading stuff, I don't really want to move stuff around on the computer too much in case I accidentally X out of the tab and then lose all of the uploads, because that would suck. So yeah, phone numbers. Maybe what you're going to do is you're going to write down the emergency contact information of all the people you know that you actually would contact in an emergency situation. Now, again, just like a sketchbook, this is not necessarily the book it is supposed to go in, but if you don't have a special book for emergency contacts or a special place for emergency contact information, then yeah, I guess this is the place for it. Now, obviously, if you start copying this and giving it to everyone, people might be like, hey, why are you giving my number out to everybody? And if you're worried about people knowing where you live, you know, writing down all your contact information and all the contact information of your neighbors is probably not going to help with that. But yeah, journal. Maybe your stuff goes in a journal. I don't know. Maybe you actually use your Commonplace book or Commonplace binder as a journal. And if you want to do that, that's fine. I don't recommend that. But if you're just starting out and you don't know what you're doing, that is definitely not a bad place to start. Start small. So if a journal is like a thing that you know and you're like, I could do that, I haven't done that in a while, or I've done that before and I just want to do it slightly differently, then yeah, start with that. This is not about changing the world in a single day. This is about making sure that when you watch a movie, you write down that you watched a movie, and so that way you don't accidentally watch it again. And maybe there's a quote that you liked, and maybe you also write down that you're going to recommend it to a friend. And this is kind of just a way to reduce the time that you lose and retain a little bit of the time that you enjoyed. Common problems. So what are some common problems with this? Well, as I mentioned earlier, some people don't leave a 3-page gap, and then that can create a lot of problems because they're like, where do I put the extra stuff in my thing when there's no space? And there's no good answer for that. So common problems, you might find some common problems for commonplacing online. I would definitely say to search those or just check the comments on this video or other videos if you don't know what's going on, if it's just really weird. You know, normally what I hear from people, not on my videos, but when I'm looking around, so it's not really what I'm hearing from people, but it's what I'm seeing from people, is that they'll buy something really cool and they want to use it and they want to make it beautiful and they want to make it functional, and it just doesn't work because they never start. And I understand that, because if I got something that was like $100 and it was going to be around for a long time and it was really high quality, I wouldn't actually want to use it. And so, you know, the easiest way to solve the common problem of the stuff being too valuable is get some things which aren't as valuable and then just destroy them. Not on purpose, but just do the thing you wanted to do, and then when it doesn't look good, that's fine. It's a rough draft. Crawl, walk, run. So, at the beginning of our lives, we crawl. And then in the middle, we walk. And then at the end, we run? No, it's more, it's more like we learn to crawl, and then we learn to walk, and then we learn to run. Now, some people go through this very quickly. Other people take a long time, but kind of doesn't matter, because as long as you have legs, you should be fine. If you don't have legs, I'm sorry. So, it doesn't have to be here. And I used it. Rot with me. Maybe we're a little bit too worried about saying the wrong thing and insulting people, and the jobs don't pay enough, so we just want to take a nap and forget everything. We're just like, this is too stressful. I'm getting out of here. So yeah, you could work on a commonplace binder if you're doing that. So if you're not in education or training or whatever else, I don't know, maybe you'd like to take some notes on whatever you're doing, because at the very least, you are writing down your existence at some point in your life, and later in your life you can be like, wow, that sucked. And then you'll never want to be in that situation again, and you'll be motivated to keep working. Or maybe you're just recovering from an injury and you got to lay down. And so it's not you want to rot and like forget everything. It's more like you just want to recover and then get back to business. And so it might be good to write some things down. Breadth and depth. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pronounce breadth right now because there's something wrong with my throat, so it's just breath right now. So you're going to go wide and also deep. And so the way to do this is normally you start small, you just grab whatever at the very beginning, and then you will fill in things that you were lacking later on. Now, what you were lacking depends on what you think you're lacking, because this is a thing for you, not for everyone. So in my next playlist, I will talk about how this is a thing for everyone, which is like the reverse of what I just said. And that's because it's students passing on their notes to other students after they graduate. Nope, we're looking at this one. A gift for future you. So you are probably not going to be gifted the Commonplace book or Commonplace binder by yourself, to yourself, from yourself. But in some ways you kind of are. So if you're just chilling and you're writing things down and you forget about it, you can go back and look at it later and be like, wow, look at this cool thing I made for myself. Lifetime of distractions. So in my last video, or previous video, I had something over here which talked about, I think it was digital drugs, which is a little dramatic. But if you're worried about your constant distractions, it might be good to just write down what you're watching, what is distracting you, and then in the future you can review your notes and be like, oh, maybe it was not a great idea to spend 8 hours watching YouTube every single day of my entire life. So, touring a binder is up next. If you want to watch a video on that, just click the video in the end screen. That should be there. I do have end screens now, so it might actually be covering my face, because I don't think I have much over here, so hi! But this is not the time for saying hello, this is the time for saying goodbye, so yeah, I'll see you later. Okay, bye.